Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The Baloch freedom movement has existed for 76 years since 1948 and at least 4 civil wars have been fought over it. It is estimated that 5,000 people have been killed in the 2000s alone and 1,40,000 have been displaced. While Balochis have their right for self-determination and have the right to stand up to Pakistan Army's atrocities, the same cannot happen by hijacking trains and targeting Pakistan civilians. Visuals have now shown how the Balochistan Liberation Army terrorists halted a train with an explosion, fired at the train from both sides of the mountain and then held hundreds of civilians hostage. The Baloch Baroui tribe Khans of Kalat or Balochis as they are known today were the rulers of Kalat. Being petty chiefs, they reported to the Mughal emperors of Delhi and supplied men-at-arms on demand. When Mughal power declined, Mir Abdullah rose to power and captured Makaran in west and Pishin and Shorawak in the northeast. The most significant Baloch ruler was Nasir Khan I, who ruled over this kingdom for 44 years. He accompanied Ahmad Shah in his expeditions to Persia and India. The division of Balochistan began in 1877, where Britain and Iran created the Balochistan Agency in 1877. This was a result of the 1876 Treaty of Kalat signed between the British Raj and the Baloch tribes. Robert Groves Sandman, who was the British charge d'affaires who was appointed to deal with the Baloch tribes, the treaty reconciled the warring tribes of the region with their Khan and recognized the direct rule of the British over the Khanate of Kalat. Now, this treaty also acknowledged British Empire as the sole arbitrator between Khan and his Sardars of cases of disputes. Sandman's system of control and tribal pacification was known as Sandmanization that was in effect from 1877 to 1947. He gave financial allowances to tribal chiefs who enforced control and used British military force only when necessary. His policy led to British control in region for many years, but methods were questioned because it favored a few tribal chiefs over others. Under the British rule, Balochistan saw several rulers. Behram Khan was recognized from 1916, Mir Dost Muhammad Khan Baloch, Behram's nephew, in 1920, but in 1928 Reza Shah came into power and the Persian forces started operations against Baloch forces with the help of the British. The Balochis were not content with the British and raised their voices against the occupation of western Balochistan by Persia at the Baloch Conference of Jakodabad in 1932. This was led by Yusuf Ali Khan Maksi and his party Anjuman-e-Ittehad Balochen, which cooperated with the Indian National Congress branch in Balochistan known as Anjumani-Watan. In 1939, a local lawyer, Qazi Muhammad Isa, created the Balochistan Muslim League in Pishin at the mosque meeting. He gained membership of the Muslim League after the Pakistan Resolution. In July 1940 was when Liaquat Ali Khan became the president of Balochistan Provincial Muslim League and demanded political reforms in Balochistan. The next story is the most crucial in understanding the Baloch freedom movement. The Balochistan Agency, as it existed during the British, had 4 provinces: Kalat, Kharan, Lasbela and Makaran. During India's independence in 1947, Balochistan had the option of either joining India, merging with Pakistan or maintaining independence. 3 of the above mentioned provinces, Kalat, Kharan and Lasbela, were under the influence of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Only Kalat under Khan Mir Ahmad Yar Khan opted for independence. The Khan of Kalat in 1946 had appointed Muhammad Ali Jinnah as his legal advisor to represent his case before the British Crown. In a meeting in Delhi on 4th of August 1947, which was attended by Lord Mountbatten, the Khan of Kalat and Nehru supported Khan's decision for independence. Jinnah insisted that Kharan also and Lasbela were to be merged with Kalat to form a complete Balochistan. Kalat declared independence on 15th of August 1947. Despite being an independent sovereign state, a British memorandum of September 12 stated that Kalat could not undertake the international responsibilities of an independent state. In a meeting held in October 1947, it was then Jinnah who suspiciously asked Khan to merge Kalat with Pakistan. Khan rejected Jinnah's claim as being betrayed by him and sought support but had to yield. On 26 March, Pakistan Army moved to Baloch coastal region and Khan had to agree to Jinnah's terms. Through Khan of Kalat and to sign the instrument of accession, his brother Prince Abdul Karim led the first armed insurgency against Pakistan in 1948. Though the rebellion was suppressed in no time, it planted the seeds of Baloch nationalism. So after being independent for 226 days, Balochistan was merged into Pakistan. Not with the will of the people, but by Jinnah's betrayal and Islamabad's military might. This betrayal from 75 years ago and the exploitation of the people and the region's resources remain at the root of the Baloch people's armed resistance. Let's start this conversation. Joining me on the telecast is Professor Madhav Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, today we take this very important and sensitive issue, the sovereignty of Balochistan that the Balochis have been fighting for decades together, but have been unsuccessful in wake of the atrocities that have been meted out by the Pakistani generals for several decades, that has led to the deterioration in the number of Balochis that once existed in 1947. How do the Balochis find a reasonable solution, independence and freedom from Pakistan, to build their own sovereign nation without having to resort to the acts of terror that were witnessed yesterday evening?
Well, I'd like to point out that on 15th August 1947, India had by far the strongest army, and it's not only the Baloch, but also the Pashtuns, the Khudai Khidmatgars of Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He was known as the Frontier Gandhi. He was very close to the Indian National Congress, and frankly, he was also thrown under the bus. They said, sorry, you have to go with Pakistan. And the same advice was given to the Khan of Kalat. You have to go with Pakistan. You have no other option. And I think, of course, the Prime Minister Nehru acted in a spirit of goodwill, thinking that as a result, there would be good relations with India and Pakistan. But today we are in 2025. Those good relations haven't come yet. The reality is, Megha, that Balochistan is a highly exploited province, and the fruits of the exploitation hardly go to the Baloch people. The Baloch people are suppressed completely by the Pakistan military, and the province is drained of its natural resources, which are now basically going to China. So when the Baloch see this happening, they see their treasure being taken away, literally under their eyes, and they get almost a very measly share of the total. Naturally, they're upset. So in my view, Megha, both in Pashtun and Baloch people, they're very proud people. I think both are going to rise against the state of Pakistan run by the military. And of course, I agree, terrorism is a very wrong thing, and we cannot condone any act of terrorism. That is the kidnapping of a train and basically, executing a few people there. I mean, but I don't believe that that's not necessary. I think circumstances are coming to a situation where both in Pashtunistan and in Balochistan, you're going to have freedom movements. And I think these freedom movements, the Baloch and the Pashtuns, they have an overseas community. They are very wealthy. And I think you will find them well funded. So I think you're going to see a very active freedom movement in Balochistan and in the Pashtun provinces of Pakistan. I think it's going to happen much earlier than any of us dared to predict about 30 years ago. Megha.
Amjad Ayub Mirza is also on the telecast with me. Mr. Mirza, the situation which is deplorable of the Balochis who have been seeking independence for decades together now, 1947, what happened has not been able, the Baloch Liberation Army, any other authorities and organizations and a community as a whole has not been able to reverse it. Do you think, is there even an iota of hope for the Balochis to get back their land and set up an independent nation today?
Thank you very much, Megha. First of all, this is not a terrorist attack. There is a war going on between Baloch nationalist armies and Pakistan. So this is not a terrorist attack. If this is a terrorist attack, then every attack that took place against Nazi Germany trains or their installations should also be categorized as a terrorist attack, number one. Number two, to answer your question, today not an inch of Balochistan's interior remains under the control of Pakistan or Pakistan army. This is not me who is saying this. This is the former Home Minister of Balochistan, Mir Zafar Zahri, who while addressing the Provincial Assembly, he is a member of Provincial Assembly, a few days ago in Balochistan, has said Pakistan has no writ in Balochistan, Pakistan has lost the war in Balochistan, and the writ in Balochistan is that of Bashir Zeb Baloch, Dr. Allah Nazar Baloch, who are leaders and commander of the Baloch Liberation Army. Now, Pakistan last week they had a meeting of all the militant organizations in Balochistan, and they have come under one umbrella, which is now called Balochistan National Army. They have formed an army. So they might be BLA, BLF or Republican Guards, but they are now coordinated under Baloch National Army. And that is why now every day we are witnessing attacks on Pakistan forces inside Balochistan in more than one cities on the same day. For instance, today they have attacked several places in different parts of Balochistan as well, while this hijacking of the train is an ongoing issue. Just now I've been told that more than 200 coffin boxes have been delivered to Quetta railway station, which are now heading for Bolan Mach. So Pakistan Army has decided that they are going to maybe sacrifice their own soldiers or kill the hostages in crossfire, whatever, but they are not prepared to negotiate with the BLA on this occasion. More than 100 Pakistani soldiers, police and ISI people and military intelligence people have been taken hostage and are kept at 3 different places by the BLA. The women and the children and the old people, elderly, were released by BLA, which Pakistan television is showing कि ये हमने छुड़ा लिए उनसे, ये छुड़ा लिए, छुड़ाए नहीं हैं. They were released and they were guided under the protection of BLA Saramchars to a safe place where they could head on towards the nearest town, city or village.
Okay, but Amjad Ayub Mirza, we can't shy away from calling it a terrorist attack because the civilians have been targeted over here. I'm going to come back to you. Let's take a look at the past history of Balochistan. The region has been marred by several conflicts in the past 76 years. I'm going to take you through them starting from 1948. And as we had spoken about how the creation of Balochistan came into being and how there were several forces into play, including the British Empire and back in the day Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who then sealed the fate of Balochistan, which came to be merged and made part of Pakistan, despite the very desires of the people of Balochistan to have a separate sovereign state. And this continues to be a cause of concern and grief for the people of Balochistan who have been fighting relentlessly but unsuccessfully for their sovereignty and self-determination. Here's a look at the history. Insurgency by Baloch separatists, Islamist militant groups over economic and political marginalization has taken place in the Pakistan history, in the Balochistan region, which is 44%, believe it or not, of the entire Pakistan. Insurgencies by Baloch nationalists began in 1948 with 5 major conflicts that took place in Pakistani history. And let's take a look at which are these 5 significant landmark conflicts. First conflict took place between 1948 and 1950. It was the princely state of Kalat, which was acceded to Pakistan in 1948. There was a rebellion for an independent state right after. The first conflict also saw over 1,000 militants in revolt, captured Jhalawaan and led attacks up until 1950. Now, this was the start of many civil wars that were going to erupt in Pakistan and Balochistan. Pakistan forces ended up recapturing the area. The militants suffered heavy casualties that led to the end of the first conflict, with the rebels left defeated at the hands of the Pakistani military. The second conflict between 1958 and 1959, Pakistan's one-unit scheme deceased government representation for tribal leaders. Last Khan of Kalat, Ahmad Yar Khan, was stripped of his powers, which was a massive setback, which was because it led to a reinforcement that Pakistan will not let go of Balochistan as a separate sovereign territory. Guerrilla war by Nawab Nuroz Khan and 1,000 armed Baloch rebels demanded abolition of one-unit scheme, and the release of Ahmad Yar Khan. That was their petition and the motive for fighting the second civil war. They were forced to surrender after peace talks and Pakistan government's amnesty pledge, which made them believe that there will be release of their leader and there will be a negotiation which will be carried forward between the two regions. But there were 160 insurgents that were tried and sentenced. Nawab Khan's son and nephew were hanged for treason. So that was the backstab of Pakistan government against the Balochis. There was the third conflict that emerged just a few years later in 1963 and continued for 6 years up to 1969. There was a new constitution which was in 1956 that was a limited provincial autonomy of Balochistan. The third conflict saw the militants building their own bases, bombing railway tracks, ambushing cowboys. There were a number of similar attacks that we saw today that were implemented, orchestrated back then as well. The army retaliated by destroying militant camps and bombing the villages in Balochistan that killed several civilians. The Baloch separatists agreed to a ceasefire after amnesty was granted to them by the Pakistani establishment. The fourth conflict that took place between the years of 1973 and 1977. Now, this was a 4-year military conflict between the Pakistani army and the separatists after the provincial government of Balochistan was dismissed by the Pakistani establishment. The martial law was imposed by Pakistan and Balochistan People's Liberation Front began guerrilla warfare against the Pakistani government. Now, after that imposition, the Pakistani forces, which were assisted by Iran, there were 3,300 Pakistani troops, 5,300 militants, there were thousands of civilians who ended up losing their lives in this conflict. The fifth conflict that began in 2004 and the longest one continues up until 2025. The key events include in 2006 the killing of Nawab Akbar Bukti who was a Baloch leader. He was killed by the Pakistani forces. In 2009, the key Baloch nationalist leader was abducted and killed. In fact, there have been a number of landmark events that have that have built the fifth Baloch conflict up until today. In 2010, there was increased militant activity, armed clashes between insurgents and the security forces of Pakistan. These armed clashes led to a number of deaths in 1990. This is in fact taking a look in the past, the casualties and fatalities that the Balochis have had to face at the hands of the Pakistani forces. Between 1973 and 1977, there were 5,300 Balochi militants, rebels that were killed. And since 2000, there have been 1,929 Baloch rebels that have been killed at the hands of the Pakistani forces. There has been a rise in enforced disappearances. There have been extrajudicial killings of the Baloch leaders and civilians. There have been Baloch Human Rights Department that reported that there were 28 victims of torture. There were 5 extrajudicial killings, 33 enforced disappearances that have been reported, suspected of Pakistan's wrongdoing. In February, this is Sajid Hussain, the man over here, which was the Baloch journalist who was found drowned in Sweden when he sought asylum. This took place in March 2020. There have been many such examples. There was another Baloch human rights activist who sought refuge in Canada, Karima Baloch, and she was mercilessly assassinated. Suspected attack on her, targeted killing by the ISI. She was killed in a suspected assassination. She was found submerged at Toronto waterfront. This assassination took place in December 2020. There were more than 5,000 reported cases of forced disappearances that were emerging out of Balochistan, which were perpetrated by the Pakistani authorities. There were 529 Balochis who were missing from 2001 up until 2017. That's the estimated figure. There were 99 enforced disappearances in October 2024. Between August 2010 and August 2014, there were 140 forcible disappearances. Bodies were later found with bullet wounds. In fact, this timeline goes on where there have been forceful abductions in November 2023, ethnic profiling, harassment and forced disappearances of 69 Baloch students. There were 50 people that continue to remain missing. So this has been the tragedy of the people of Balochistan, who have been fighting for their rights but have been silenced mercilessly, and there has been little support that they have been able to get from international organizations and powerful countries all across the globe. In 2015, a NewsX reporter by the name of Haroon Baloch visited a Balochistan mass grave, which shows you the proof of Pakistan Army's atrocities against the people of Baloch. Let's actually take a look at that news report, which is a decade old.
मैं इस वक्त बलूचिस्तान कोयटा न्यू कहान में हूँ, जो शौदाए बलूचिस्तान का खबर है। ये जो आप देख रहे हैं शहीद बाबा खैरबख्श मरी का मज़ार है, और जो साथ में जितने भी लोग हैं ये सारे बलूचिस्तान के शौदा है जिनको पाकिस्तानी एजेंसीज उठा कर ले गए थे और बाद में उनकी मुस्तशदा लाश फेंकी, और वो सारे यहाँ पर दफन हैं। और कुछ ऐसे शहीद हैं जो अपने आबाई इलाकों में जैसे मस्तुंग, मज, कलात, तुरबत, डेरा बुकटी वहाँ पर दफनाए गए, लेकिन उनके नाम प्लेट वगैरह हम लोगों ने वहाँ पर लगाए। ये सारे आप देख रहे हैं, ये सारे शौदाए बलूचिस्तान का खबर जो पाकिस्तान ISI के दहशत गर्दों के हाथों शहीद हैं, और पाकिस्तान अपने काले करतूत छुपाने के लिए दूसरों पर इल्ज़ाम लगाते कि वो कंधार में बैठे हैं, दूसरों के कहने पर कर रहे हैं। हम अपना आवाज़ खुद ही उठा रहे हैं, हम अपने वतन में रहकर ही जद्दोजहद कर रहे हैं। और पाकिस्तान से बलोचों की बच्चा पाकिस्तान से नफरत करता है और अपनी जौद आज़ादी के लिए हमें जितना जाने देना पड़े हम देंगे। जिस दिन से काबिज रियासत ने बलूचिस्तान पर बरज़ोर ताकत कब्जा किया था, उस दिन से आज तक बलोच कौम अपनी आज़ादी के लिए जद्दोजहद कर रहा है और इसके लिए बहुत सी कुर्बानियाँ भी दी है और देते रहेंगे। और आप देख रहे हैं ये सारे पाकिस्तान के आतों शहीद होने वाले बलोचों की कब्र है। और पाकिस्तान इतनी गिरी हुई हरकत करता है कि हमारे शहीदों के मकबरों को भी बेहुरमती करता है और यहाँ तक कि 3-4 शहीदों के उन्होंने जो मकबरे भी जला दिए।
Professor Nalapad, I again come to you and the same question about how is it that the helpless people of Balochistan, whose numbers have been shockingly dwindling, 44% of the land of Pakistan is actually the region of Balochistan, and only 5% of the population resides over there, indicating starkly the population that was considerable in 1947 and what it has been reduced to. If the voices of the people of Baloch is not going to be heard by the international communities like the United Nations and powerful countries like the United States of America, how is it that the Balochis are going to get the freedom that they deserve from the Pakistani establishment?
Look, what is called the Pakistan establishment is the Pakistan Army. The Pakistan Army controls Pakistan and it controls the establishment. There is no establishment that is independent of the army. And may I point out that Justin Trudeau, he raised a big hoo-ha about the killing of a Sikh separatist who was in Canada at the hands of some other gang, and he blamed India for it. Now you have a Baloch activist who was plainly killed by agents of the Pakistan Secret Service, and Canada has, under Justin Trudeau, until now, has kept completely quiet about that. Why is the death of a Baloch, I mean, why is that death in Canada not even mentioned by the Canadian leadership? It's a clear case of double standard. And I would like to point out that what is happening is ruthless exploitation of Balochistan by the Pakistan military. And frankly, the military is now serving as a satellite of the Chinese army. So essentially, the Chinese are getting the benefit of the riches and resources of Balochistan, and which is why there's considerable resentment coming up against the Chinese mega. So all this is really at boiling point, and frankly, it's a completely homegrown movement. And in my view, it's only continue, and it's going to be added to by the Pashtun movement, which also is now gaining.
Amjad Ayub Mirza, situations such as this where sources tell us, reports pouring in that the Afghanistan Taliban government is working together hand in glove with the Baloch movement, with the Balochi militants to fight against the Pakistani army. How successful do you think this will be in establishing a separate state of Balochistan?
Well, at the moment, if you look at it, it so seems that there is a dual power situation in Balochistan, where the power of the Baloch rebels and the power of the Pakistani state was equal. But now that balance is tilting in, shifting in favor of the Baloch freedom fighters. And I would not call this a terrorist attack, although I understand your limitations about not calling it an act of war. This is war. In war, they have not captured the civilians. They have not targeted civilians. They have let every single civilian to leave, to go. They have taken about 6, 7, 8 hours to identify the military personnel, the ISI personnel, the police personnel, and the military intelligence people who were traveling in that train. This operation of BLA was conducted under meticulous intelligence information by their own intelligence wing, and it involves more than 100 BLA people of different units, and So I think to call it a terrorist attack is not right. This is a war, and now Balochistan. It was used to be like inch by inch the rebels were taking control of Balochistan. Now they are taking control of Balochistan like 50 miles at a time. They are taking control of towns, and for 2 days, 3 days they remain there. They talk to people. They burn the police stations. They confiscate the weapons and ammunition, and then they go back into their bases. So I think that now it depends if Pakistan continues with its barbaric treatment of Baloch people and does not sit down and negotiate with the Baloch for a ceasefire or for surrender, then I think that the whole of Balochistan society will explode. They will explode, as you have just shown an old video in which the lady was showing the graves and the tombs and everything. Now, under Maharang Baloch, millions of women and youths have organized and mobilized against the Pakistani narrative. So that if that power keg explodes, if Maharang Baloch today announces that she is in favor of freedom and independence of Balochistan, and that she will not settle for anything less than surrender of Pakistan army, that is the end of the story for Pakistan then.
Okay.
I am expecting, I am waiting, and I am praying that Maharang Baloch musters up that courage, forgets about the Nobel Peace Prize nomination, and sticks to her plan and announces that now she will continue her struggle for the independence of Balochistan from the clutches of Pakistan.
Okay, I thank both of you for joining me on the telecast and airing your views. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX.